Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where once again Kathleen Kennedy has chosen poorly. And this time it is especially embarrassing because this is a franchise that Kathleen Kennedy worked on directly at the beginning of her career, proving that she wasn't at all responsible for its success. As you might recall, the whole reason that Kennedy was hired to take over Lucasfilm in the first place was because of her extensive history with George Lucas and especially Mr. Movie Magic himself, Steven Spielberg. She made her career starting out as his assistant and then producing Spielberg's movies, but clearly was not a part of his creative process at all. None of that movie magic rubbed off on her, not even a smidge. In fact, she seems to have negative movie magic. Perhaps Kathleen Kennedy, you could argue, is more of a Roy Disney, right? A numbers business person, and not a Walt, the creative. But she seemed to have not been able to get along with any directors either. I think Lucasfilm, from a business perspective, is even a mess. So what is she really bringing to the table at this point? I've heard from my sources that this is likely the final straw for Kennedy because of her past involvement with this very franchise. If she can't get this right, she can't get anything right. Although I think many of us suspected that already. Her current contract runs through 2024. She just has 1 year left. Question is, does Bob Iger let her finish out her run and then step down, saving some personal dignity? Or does he stop the bleeding? And I mean, how much blood is left in Lucasfilm anyway? If he wants Kennedy out now, if he's like, I can't take another year of this, what are his options? He is firing a lot of people right now. So he could either fire her, which I think I have to say is unlikely because of her relationships in the business. Fans do not care for Kathleen Kennedy, and that's partially her own fault. Another thing you might remember, in fact, for some of you, I'm sure it's seared in your brain when she was so aggressive against the original Star Wars fans, saying that she didn't owe them anything. Why did she say that? I wonder how she feels about that now. But she does have a lot of connections and respect in the industry. And she did deliver several billion-dollar films early on in her run, so I think those are the things that have been keeping her safe up until now. Maybe they could talk her into stepping down for personal reasons, like a lot of the recent Disney people are. Some of them aren't fired, some of them step down, like Disney CFO Christine McCarthy did. That was a big one. If Christine McCarthy can step down for personal reasons, so can Kathleen Kennedy. To be honest, I think Kennedy will be allowed to finish her current contract. There's just, again, a year left on it. They'll give her a producing deal at Disney, like Amy Pascal got when she was forced to step down as the head of Sony after her emails leaked as part of that scandal. Or go back. Kathleen Kennedy could go back to working with Spielberg, because that seemed to work. And her production company with husband Frank Marshall, which often also works with Spielberg. They both started out working with Spielberg, in fact. And some of the movies they've done on their own are not bad. I recently rewatched Seabiscuit, like in the last year, and that was pretty solid, particularly as a rewatch, I have to say. She just seems to be particularly bad at Lucasfilm. I mean, Dave Filoni is keeping Star Wars on life support just fine. I think he can keep it alive for another year. And they could do an executive search. Although I'll tell you who I think should run it in a minute. It's Dave Filoni. But hold on, with a star, with an asterisk. All right, so anyway, I'm almost done with Star Wars Rebels, which is amazing. You guys were right. It's so freaking good. I'm so much more excited about Ahsoka now, especially after Rosario Dawson recently confirmed it's basically Rebels Season 5. I think it will be big, but then not a lot of people watched Rebels, unfortunately. Filoni's Star Wars animation is so fantastic, and it's the only thing keeping Star Wars alive at this point, but its viewership numbers actually aren't that big. However, especially with Season 4 of Rebels, it's very much like Mandalorian. I'm like, wow, that Mandalorian was certainly cut from this same cloth. And that went over very well, even with people who weren't fans of Star Wars animation. So I hope Ahsoka works on two different levels, as a Rebels Season 5, but then also as a really good spin-off, hopefully, of The Mandalorian. Another thing in that same kind of Filoni live action space. If you would like to watch Rebels, which I highly recommend, especially since it's kind of slow right now, I've put a cheat sheet up several times on my Twitter feed. I'll do it again. I'll put it on my Instagram. I'm almost done. I'll finish in the next week or so. It's taken me a month. I'm not watching every episode, but I am watching a lot of them. But it's fantastic. It's delightful homework. I absolutely adore it, and I again strongly recommend. It took me a while to get on board too, but I'm glad that I did. So I'm paying it forward to you. Watch Star Wars Rebels. But I think they might want to cancel that James Mangold Star Wars movie. He, of course, having just directed this new Dial of Destiny. Whew, but another Star Wars movie canceled? I mean, this shit has gone way past shocking, past disbelief, and now we're at whatever, man. Like, you do you. We don't care anymore. And I think that attitude is also hurting the Lucasfilm brand for sure. People are like, let me know when we're done with this. It's just, I can't. It's like DC a little bit. I think that Star Wars and DC are in very similar spaces. But at least the Filoni stuff is still kind of working. I love the end of Mandalorian season 3, but it wasn't as big as the earlier seasons. But yeah, I think people are just like, I can't take it anymore. I can't take the behind the scenes drama. I can't take the poor quality. And I think MCU is kind of like in that, starting to approach that same area as well. All right, so who should take over Lucasfilm? Well, again, after getting into Star Wars animation, incredible stuff that finally made me get Star Wars. I mean, I'm like, wow, I get this franchise now. I think the clear answer is Dave Filoni and some executive to work with him. I mean, I don't know if the gun-saffron combo is going to work out, but it's not a bad idea on paper, putting a creative with a producer so that the creative has a little bit more freedom to create themselves. I mean, Filoni has overseen his animated shows, which were quite prolific, and he did not write and direct every single episode. So he's able to pick other great talent and oversee them. So he could certainly do that at a grander scale for Lucasfilm and Star Wars overall. I mean, he is George Lucas's chosen heir. I mean, they should have gone with him in the first place. But he didn't have the experience, I think. And they felt that Kennedy did have that really strong relationship with Lucas and Spielberg. I mean, on paper, Kennedy made sense as well. But then it was just so awful. So awful. Oh my gosh. All right. So let's take a look at Dial of Destiny's actual box office. A domestic opening of 60 and a worldwide debut of 130. It ain't good, but it's not horrible. Let's talk about it. So the real problem, though, is that Kathleen Kennedy let the budget balloon to over $300 million before advertising. So this movie will never make its money back. It would barely make its money back if it hit $1 billion. So that was just really poor. I mean, again, I don't think she's wearing a business hat either, because that's bad business. And also, the opening of Crystal Skull over a decade ago was at $100 million, not accounting for inflation. So that proves that the movie could have opened bigger, if it was operating at maximum capacity. Now, sure, Dial of Destiny was trying to build on Crystal Skull, which fans hated. So you could say, well, it had to account for that damage that was done to the brand. But still, it's been over a decade. I mean, it didn't open at like 80 or 75. Like, it opened at 60. And initially, fans were excited to see Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones one last time. Everybody's on a nostalgia kick right now. Let's go. Also, a lot is being said about, Indiana Jones is an older skewing franchise now, so what could be done with it? And I don't think that's the case. I think a lot could be done with it. I think with a stronger cast and more upbeat story, this would have been a strong family play. Indiana Jones is still quite popular at the theme parks, for example. And also, Kathleen Kennedy failed to cast a wide enough net of appeal. 54% Caucasian, as we discussed last week. Anything above the 40 percentile for Caucasian means you don't have broad enough appeal. And when you have a huge budget movie like this, you need to get everybody into the multiplex. An 18% Hispanic is particularly low for modern audiences. I mean, the black audiences number is very low, but Hispanic is usually in the 20s, the 20th percentile, sometimes now even in the 30th. So that's really, really low. And 58% male. Phoebe Waller-Bridge didn't bring in any women. Now, the B+ cinema score isn't awful. It's the lowest you can get before it's full-on panic for a movie. It has a pretty solid audience score on Rotten Tomatoes as well, and with an opening in line with Mission Impossible Fallout and No Time to Die, also a tremendous downer, maybe Dial of Destiny could get to the 700 million range like those two films. That would put it on par with Crystal Skull, not accounting for inflation, but it wouldn't look so bad in the charts, right? Although with its insane budget, again, it still wouldn't turn a profit. It still has the 4th of July holiday to go this week, and another full weekend after that before the new Mission Impossible hits. I wonder if they'll do damage to each other, by the way. Because again, as I said, they're very similar in terms of the pacing and the action sequences. Spider-Verse Could take back a few premium screens this coming weekend, but with that movie already 5 weeks out, Indy should be able to hold on to most of its premium screens until Mission Impossible the following Wednesday. Although Mission Impossible will open overseas in some countries July 8th, but for the most part it opens July 12th. But then it's Barbenheimer time! And with that and Mission Impossible in the mix, a lot of people might just wait to watch Dial of Destiny on digital or wait even longer and get it at no extra cost on Disney+. So 700 million even might not be in the cards. It might not even be able to get to that. Can it even get to 500 million like The Little Mermaid? Whew, thank goodness that got there. Honestly, at 130 debut, that's so low, I don't know if it can. It's probably going to be I think my guess is it's going to be somewhere around 500. Above or below, we'll see, but somewhere around 500. Also, as I mentioned previously, Disney debuting Dial of Destiny and Elemental months in advance at Cannes, and Warner Brothers debuting The Flash months in advance at CinemaCon and all those fan screenings was a huge mistake. Not only did the tepid reviews and word of mouth take a toll on all three pictures, but these movies seemed stale by the time they finally hit theaters for the general public. Now, when you're already been waiting months to see the movie, you start to feel that people are seeing it. So since you've already waited months, why not wait a couple, in some cases, weeks more to watch it on digital, or a couple months more to watch it at no extra charge on a streaming service, right? And while Barbie hasn't been shown to that many people yet, they have done the junket. So some people have seen it, but the social media embargo has not lifted yet, which is smart. They are doing an amazing ad campaign, but have they peaked too early? We talked about this on Friday in the live stream, and Thursday. And one of you very accurately pointed out that because of the pending actors strike, they had to do all the Barbie press now, because if they do go on strike, they won't be able to do any press closer to the movie's release date. So they had no choice. But you have to wonder if maybe they peaked too soon, doing like a full court publicity press 3 weeks before the movie opens. We'll see. Hopefully they banked a lot of physical media, like photos to put on social media that they can use even if the actors themselves can no longer be available. And then, of course, the drama of Barbie versus Oppenheimer should keep them both in the news. So I think they should be okay, but it's certainly not ideal. As for the rest of the box office, both Spider-Verse and Elemental had excellent holds, the exact same hold, but still their box office fortunes couldn't be further apart. Spider-Verse has shot past 300 million domestic, shot right past it, even surpassing Spider-Man Homecoming and several other live-action movies at the domestic box office. However, on that note, its overseas numbers remain on the low side, which is unfortunate, but still, it's a tremendous hit. Definitely changing the animation game, as well as making huge progress for more diverse mainstream movies. But Elemental, it still hasn't hit 100 million in 3 weeks, and might not even be able to match Lightyear's domestic total. That's so bad. Remember, both the top creatives on Lightyear recently got fired by Disney. They didn't get to, leave for personal reasons. They got canned. And I don't think they're gonna let Peter Sohn direct any more movies, because Good Dinosaur was also a box office bomb. He's such a sweet guy. He did such a great job of a voice in Lightyear. But I like Peter Sohn. I hope he gets to stay at the studio. But again, I don't see him directing anything anytime soon. And then maybe he won't want to stay at the studio. But I don't know. I mean, he himself has got to take a hard look inside, considering both of his movies did so poorly. I mean, also, people like Elemental, right? I think they're all just waiting to watch it on Disney Plus for the most part. So it's maybe not totally Peter Sohn's fault. Well, it kind of is, because here's the thing. You might say, well, it's Disney's fault for putting all those Pixar movies on Disney Plus and creating a pattern. But, Elemental just didn't seem theater-worthy. And that's not only the fault of the Pixar brass who oversaw the film, but Peter Sohn who created it. Neither The Good Dinosaur or Elemental screamed, "See me in theaters." And you got to scream that real loud these days, considering how the siren call of streaming and digital at home. Speaking of animation and sirens, Universal has their first dud of the year with DreamWorks' Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken DOA. It seems the Disney haters will not see whatever Universal puts out. It was good while it lasted. No Hard Feelings had a slightly bigger second weekend drop than Gene Stupnitsky's previous film Good Boys, but the second weekend drop is about on par with the very similar Bad Teacher. As I said last week, this Sony movie is totally playing like Universal's new line of B pictures and should go to digital very soon, where I think it will do quite well and then do extremely well on Netflix down the line, where all Sony movies end up after their digital runs. J-Law and her fans can still feel good about this movie. It got more attention than Causeway, but it's not quite the decisive comeback that I think we all were hoping for when it debuted last week. Transformers, though, really has not been able to compete in this box office arena. It started out okay, better than Indiana Jones, but it is just not held. While The Little Mermaid isn't going to hit 300 million domestic, but thankfully at least past 500 million worldwide. But it's still such an embarrassing disaster. It's a far cry from the other live-action Disney Renaissance remakes, which almost all joined the billion-dollar club. I mean, like Elemental, The Little Mermaid will have to hope it explodes on Disney Plus to save face. Really just a disaster. And I think a decisive response from audiences that they don't like race-bending characters. They like original characters of color like Miles Morales, but race-bending established characters just is not working. But wow, look at the bottom of the top 10. The clearance bin. The Flash suffered another shockingly huge drop in its third weekend and will barely be able to pass 100 million total domestic. But look at the worldwide. It's only at 245. Yikes! DC recent releases have been anemic. It's not just The Flash. And one has to wonder if Warner Brothers Discovery will still release Aquaman 2 in theaters. Why run an ad campaign and do all that publicity? Sometimes you think it's an engine which will help it down the line on digital and streaming, but come on, this is a disaster. What about Blue Beetle? Well, that's a less expensive movie, and it's supposed to be separate from the DCU. It's supposed to be the first character in Gunn's new universe. I don't know why he said that. I would have left it until I saw how it did at the box office. But really, it could not be more clear. Here's another message from audiences. They need a DC break. Will a year off until Superman Legacy in 2025 be enough? Especially since that film is set to start going before cameras soon and will be consistently in the news until its release. So not really much of a break. I do not have a good feeling. I got a bad feeling about the future of DC. Asteroid City also suffered a big drop in its second week of wide release after poor audience scores. And sure enough, it's hitting digital July 11th. I think it should hit digital, quite frankly, this week. But I think July 11th is fine. But I think it would have played very well over the 4th of July holiday on digital. And let's see how it does in theaters. I think it would have done very well on digital, though. I think here it's like, should we? But I think on digital it would have been exciting. Over on streaming on Nielsen's charts for the end of May, beginning of June, FUBAR and SWAT, an acquired show, held their top positions for the second week in a row. But Ted Lasso hit a season high point as viewers moved to binge mode. Same for Succession, which went up a spot to number 9 on the overall chart. Oh boy! Over on the originals chart, Mrs. Maisel, our new Lois Lane, speaking of DC, and also speaking of maybe it not doing so well, is benefiting from binge viewing and lack of competition, but look how low these numbers are, and couldn't get on the overall chart. And these are all the seasons, by the way. All the seasons, and it still couldn't get on the overall chart. On the movies chart, these numbers are ridiculously low, even worse than the other charts. But still, it's nice to see Dungeons & Dragons go up on Paramount Plus to number 2. Quantumania is holding okay. But unfortunately, both Air and Shazam 2 dropped after their debuts last week. But they're still on the chart, though. That's good. Over on Netflix's charts for just last week, Extraction, both movies stayed at the top of the top 10 as well. While with shows, Black Mirror was able to climb to number 1 after debuting in second place last weekend, so it saves a little face there. That's good. While Suits, with Meghan Markle herself, hit Netflix and did okay. Not great, but okay. Then on iTunes, the usual suspects over here, although you can see that people do like Indiana Jones, as his 4-movie bundle is still in the top 10, still on sale after it first went on sale last week. So that's 2 weeks in the top 10 on iTunes. So that there is interest in the franchise. People just don't love this version, this latest installment. As for this coming week, it's a big holiday here in the United States, which technically started kind of on Friday, with 4th of July on a Tuesday, which pretty much wipes out the entire week. A lot of people are going to be taking off this entire week. So not a lot going on, but there's some action. Joyride and Insidious The Red Door open on Friday in theaters, while on digital, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 drops again on digital, also on Friday. Not the usual Tuesday day, because that's 4th of July. It's dropping on a Friday. But not on Disney Plus. Don't get excited. It's just wherever movies are sold and rented digitally. It'll only be for sale, though, because it's the regular window. I think, or at a very high rental price point. But, like iTunes and stuff like that. And then, of course, on Tuesday, NBC, PBS, and CNN all will air 4th of July celebrations. As for streaming with movies, Netflix has the Wham documentary on Wednesday, and on Friday, comedy The Outlaws. Then with shows, Disney Plus drops Kazazimoto, Generation Fire on Wednesday, a series of animated shorts from African filmmakers. I got the opportunity to see them in advance. I'm doing some interviews with them, which will drop this coming week. Very good show. Very good. Definitely, I think, worth your time. While on Thursday, Netflix has the first half of season 2 of surprise hit The Lincoln Lawyer. People love the first season. Max has a Shaun White documentary, while My Adventures with Superman, let's see how kiddie this is, starts on Adult Swim with episodes hitting Max the very next day. Finally, on Friday, Prime Video has The Horror of Dolores Roach, while Hulu has another trashy, juicy news special, The Ashley Madison Affair, about the 2015 hack and leak of the website's users. Ooh, people love that trashy, juicy stuff. Hulu has found a real sweet spot with that. I watched the Erika Jane documentary, and I watched the Murdoch thing too. Yeah, they're pretty good. Actually, I think that the Murdoch one I watched first aired on like ABC and then eventually went over to Hulu, but these are pretty good. This is from ABC News. And that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch for the 4th of July holiday? Or if you live somewhere outside the United States for this week? And what do you think of the Indiana Jones box office and the situation with Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm? Share those, talk about juicy, juicy and dramatic, right? Share those thoughts. I almost said trashy, but it's fun though. It's fun. Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.